The sun cracked low across the Wyoming horizon, casting long bones of light over parched earth and brittle sage. A hawk circled overhead, too lazy to hunt. Below, a man stood alone at the edge of a collapsing fence, sweat streaking through the dust on his brow. Eli Granger drove a rusted nail into splintering wood, the hammer handle wrapped in rawhide and desperation. His cattle had thinned down to ghosts. The well had turned brackish, and the wind, his only companion for weeks, seemed to mock him now. He wiped his hands on his trousers, leather gone stiff from blood and rust. A storm teased the distant ridges, but brought no promise. He hitched his mule to the wagon and climbed aboard, with creaking like a tired prayer. Town was 20 miles east, and he had $2 silver and a broken axle's worth of scrap iron to his name. By the time he reached Dawson's Junction, the day had sunk into a copper dusk. Heat bled from the stones. The town bustled like a kicked anthill, rail men loading crates, women hauling sacks of flour, and drunks slipping between saloons like smoke. Eli kept to the edge, wary of voices, wary of eyes. He wasn't a man they liked to see back. Granger meant debt. It meant failure. It meant the war had given someone a gun and never took it back. He tied off his mule near the livery and stepped onto planks outside Remy's General, the warp boards groaning beneath his weight. Sold the iron, got cheated, left with a half sack of oats and a can of oil. It wasn't enough to keep the place running another week. Then he heard the train whistle. It came in long and low, like the groan of something ancient turning over in its grave. Eli paused. The eastbound train only ran on Thursdays, and this was a Thursday. Curiosity, or perhaps some feral instinct, led him toward the platform. The crowd was thinning already. Reunions concluded, letters handed off, passengers gone. But one figure remained, framed beneath the station's overhang like a painting left out in the rain. She was heavy-set, dressed in a pink dress that had wilted from travel and time, a wide-brimmed hat crushed in her lap. Her suitcase sat unopened beside her. She looked like someone trying hard not to cry and failing quietly. No one looked at her, not directly. A group of boys passed, snickering. One threw a chewed-up apple core at the dirt near her boots. "Train leaves something behind," one said. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. Eli didn't know what moved his feet. Maybe it was pity, maybe recognition, maybe something older, like the ghost of his wife whispering from the grave. Whatever it was, he stepped off the boardwalk and crossed the platform. He took off his coat. "Evening," he said, his voice coarse from days without speaking. She looked up, eyes wary but proud. Deep brown, steady, ringed with something tired and fierce. "No one's coming for you, are they?" he asked. It wasn't a question. Not really. "No," she said. One word, sharper than the wind. He draped the coat over her shoulders. Still cold out here come nightfall. She stared at him like he might vanish if she blinked. "You don't know me." "No," Eli agreed, "but I know what being left feels like." That made her eyes flicker. Not soft, just seeing. He nodded toward the suitcase. "You got a place to go?" Her jaw tightened. "St. Louis man. Promised marriage. Wrote me a whole year. Said meet him here. Thursday train." She laughed once, bitter. Guess he didn't like how I turned out in person. Eli looked down at his boots. "You hungry?" She hesitated. "'Cause I got a pot of beans back home and no one to share 'em with." She studied him. Her gaze wasn't one of a woman used to rescue. It was one of a woman who'd been promised things before. Things that never came. "My name's Maybelle," she said. "Eli." They shook hands like strangers on the edge of a cliff. "You offer me charity?" she asked. "No, ma'am," Eli said. "I'm a skin you to marry me." Silence felt like snow. Maybelle blinked, then laughed, not cruel, not kind, just surprised. "You out of your damn mind?" "Maybe," Eli said. "Ain't got much. Ain't offering romance or riches. But I got land, got room, got silence that'd do us both some good." She stared at him for a long time. Her eyes searched for trick. When she didn't find it, she rose, slow, dignity intact, picked up her suitcase. "All right," she said, "but don't think I'm some broken bird. I don't sing for cages." Eli nodded. Don't like cages either. They rode out together in silence, the mule plodding slow through dust and dusk. The wind rose behind them, scattering papers from the depot, stirring the prairie grass into whispers. Above, thunder mumbled behind the distant ridges. Maybelle didn't speak. She held his coat close, but didn't lean in. Eli didn't expect her to. They were two strangers with broken histories, meeting at the crossroad of what was left. As the last light died behind them, the land stretched open and waiting, rough, untamed, and full of ghosts. And for the first time in a long while, Eli Granger felt like maybe he wasn't the last one left. The wind never stopped on Eli Granger's land. It curled through the eaves like a thief and moaned across the grassless fields like something grieving. Maybelle had taken to wearing a scarf tied tight over her hair and fingers wrapped in fabric. When she kneaded dough, flour dusted her arms like ghost paint. She moved with quiet precision, as if anything too loud might startle the house into collapse. Their first week passed in rituals of avoidance. Eli rose before the sun, chopped wood like the devil was in it, then rode fence until dusk. Maybelle swept and cooked, sewed curtains from old feed sacks, and read from a Bible so tattered its pages needed gentler hands than either of them had. They spoke little, but the silence grew less sharp each day. One morning, Eli returned to find a tin plate of cornbread on the stoop, still warm. He ate it with bare fingers, licking crumbs from his palm. The next evening, he left her half a smoked rabbit on the kitchen table, without saying a word. She didn't thank him, and he didn't expect her to. They were learning how not to be alone. But the land was not kind. A dust storm came through on the fourth day. High wind, brown sky, grit that bit the eyes and choked the air. Eli tied down the shed, while Maybelle shuttered the house. When it passed, the west fence had blown flat, and a water barrel split open like a rotten gourd. Eli cursed so viciously he made his mule flinch. That night, they sat together on the porch, the world too broken to sleep. Maybelle sipped coffee in silence. "You ever live on land like this?" Eli asked, his voice low, barely above the creak of wood. She didn't answer right away. Then, once, Louisiana, swampland, hot, thick, this here's dry in the bones. Eli nodded. He stared at the horizon. "My daddy believed you had to beat the land to make it give. But all I ever got from beating is blisters." She looked at him then, not pitying, measuring. "You don't talk much," she said. "I say what needs saying," he replied. "You ask a woman to marry you after 5 minutes. That needed saying?" He let the question hang. "I saw you sitting there alone," he said eventually. "And I thought, maybe if we're both nothing, we can build something out of that." She stood, brushed off her skirt. "I'm not nothing, Mr. Granger. I'm just tired." "Eli," he said. She gave a small nod and went inside. By the second week, the boundaries began to shift. He stopped pretending to avoid her, and she stopped shrinking herself to fit the empty spaces. She sang while she worked, not full songs, just snatches. Her voice was warm molasses and smoke. He found himself lingering nearby, pretending to check window hinges just to hear it. One afternoon, while replacing the chicken wire around the coop, Eli sliced his palm clean open. Blood dripped onto the dry earth. Maybelle came running, apron fluttering. She took his hand without asking and led him inside. Cleaned it, wrapped it. Her fingers were strong, sure, her face unreadable. "You're too careless," she said. "I was looking at you." That startled her. Her hands paused. She didn't pull away, but she didn't smile either. Later that night, Eli stood outside her door and almost knocked, but didn't. Instead, he sat on the porch with his wounded hand wrapped and his thoughts loosed. The moon was pale and high, the stars watching like they knew how little time a man had to fix the broken parts of himself. The next day, a stranger rode in. He was lean and mean-eyed, boots too new for a man who claimed to be selling tools. Eli didn't like the way the man looked at Maybelle. Didn't like the way he smiled too long, or how he lingered by the barn when he said goodbye. When he'd gone, Eli stood by the door, fist tight. "You get men like that in your life before?" he asked. Maybelle didn't look up from the carrots she was slicing. I get men who think I owe him something just for being in the same room, she said. He ain't new. Eli stared at the fire. I don't like him knowing where we live. You think we're safe here? He said nothing. Later, he dug out the old revolver from under a floorboard, oiled it slow. The smell of metal and memory filled the room. That night, they ate in silence again. But it wasn't awkward. It was cautious, waiting, like animals listening for wolves in the dark. One day while cleaning, Maybelle found a photograph tucked inside a drawer, a sepia image of a young woman holding a baby, her face half faded with time. She left it on the table. Eli saw it, didn't speak for hours. That evening, he sat beside the hearth, staring into the flames. Her name was Helen, he said. Baby never got a name. Fever took him both in 1 week. That was 7 years ago. Haven't said her name aloud since. Maybelle didn't respond right away. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out a necklace. Plain chain, small cross. My mama wore this. When she died, I buried it in the swamp behind the church. Dug it back up a year later. Still carrying the dirt smell. He looked at her. She looked back, and something shifted. The next morning, Maybelle stepped outside barefoot, felt the cold earth under her soles. She touched the porch railing like it might belong to her. Eli watched from the edge of the barn. There was a light in his eyes that hadn't been there since he buried the photograph again. She turned. I'm staying, she said. I figured, he replied. Thunder grumbled far off. The wind changed. They both felt it, something coming. But for now, the sky held its breath, and two strangers on cursed land stood side by side, not touching but no longer apart. The ground cracked deeper with each passing week, as if the land itself wanted to swallow what remained of Eli Granger's life. Summer came early and cruel, baking the earth until fence posts leaned like drunks. The well whispered its emptiness. Calves born weak didn't last 3 days. Even the birds grew quiet. Eli and Maybelle worked through it. Side by side, wordless most days. They moved like people who decided to stay even after the roof had fallen. She planted peas near the shed despite the dust. He built a new chicken run out of salvage doors. Every nail driven, every seed buried was a quiet defiance. But something darker coiled just beyond the fence line. It started with hoof prints. 3 sets. Eli found them one dawn near the creek, fresh and sharp in the mud. No cattle gone, no fences cut, but it meant someone had ridden close without knocking. He followed the tracks as far as the cedar stand and then lost them. When he came back, his shirt was soaked through with sweat and his jaw locked tight. Maybelle met him on the porch, wiping flour from her hands. You look like you've seen a ghost. I seen something that thinks it's got a right to haunt. That afternoon, she watched him load the old revolver and slip it under the porch floorboard again. No more pretending they were safe. The next day, a man rode up, one Eli hadn't seen in years. Sheriff Tolliver, gray-bearded, half-drunk from the look of him, but still upright in the saddle. He didn't dismount, just sat there, reins loose, eyes shaded under a sun-bleached hat. Heard you took in a bride, Tolliver said, voice dry as wind. Eli stayed in the doorway. Word travels fast. Not word, letter. The sheriff held up an envelope. From Missouri, man claims he paid a rail fare for a colored woman. Says she disappeared off the platform and he's owed what's his. Eli didn't move. Behind him, Maybelle stood still in the kitchen's shadow, not hiding, but not welcoming either. She ain't property, Eli said. No, but there's law says she ain't yours, either. Not legal, not official. Tolliver looked past him toward the house. He's coming. Couple days, maybe less. He ain't alone. I don't scare easy, Tom. Tolliver grunted. Never said you did. Just thought you ought to know when a storm's brewing. You want protection, you best make it right on paper. With that, he turned and rode off, dust rising behind like smoke. Inside, Maybelle poured water into a tin cup and handed it to Eli. Her hand didn't shake. You think he'll really come? She asked. Eli nodded. Men like that don't let go of what they think they own. I won't be taken, she said. I was given away too many times already. Eli looked at her. for a long moment. "I never gave you away, and I won't let you be taken." They sat together that evening, rifles laid across their laps, watching the tree line. 2 nights later, he arrived. The man from Missouri wore a black suit that hadn't seen dust until now. He had slicked hair, city teeth, and the kind of voice that spoke over people instead of to them. "I'm here for my fiancée," he said, smiling like he was owed something. "She's not yours," Eli said. The man dismounted. Behind him, 2 others waited, hands near their hips. One had a scattergun. The other chewed something black and spit onto the dirt. "She answered my letters, promised herself, took my money. She changed her mind," Maybelle said, stepping out from behind the doorway, her apron gone, a shotgun cradled in her arms. "That worth killing over?" The man's smile faded. "You made an agreement." Eli stepped forward. "And I made one after. You'll leave now." "I'll leave when I'm damn well ready." The man moved fast, reached into his coat. Eli saw the flash of metal and drew quicker. One shot echoed off the hills like a church bell split in half. The man dropped to his knees, clutching his side. Not dead, but bleeding bad. The other 2 didn't move. Maybelle raised her shotgun, leveled it at their chests. "You can bury him right here," she said, "or you can carry him off." They chose the second. When they were gone, the prairie went silent again. Eli holstered the revolver and leaned against the post, chest heaving. "You shot him," Maybelle said, still steady. "He was reaching. I warned him." She nodded. "You always shoot that true?" "No," he said, rubbing his brow. "I just ain't got nothing left to lose that I'm willing to give." Maybelle stepped closer. "You do now." He looked at her then, really looked. Dirt on her cheek, wind in her hair, eyes burning steady as the sun. Neither of them spoke. That night, rain finally came, hard and sudden. Maybelle stood barefoot on the porch, face tilted to the sky, laughing like a woman no longer haunted. Eli joined her, let the water run down his back, wash away weeks of dust and blood. The fields drank deep, the house stood firm, and the wind, for once, didn't sound like it wanted to leave. The scent of gunpowder still lingered days after the shooting. Clinging to the porch rail, the corners of Eli's coat, the brittle air that blew in from the hills. The man from Missouri hadn't died, but the blood he left behind had soaked deep into the dust, marking the land like an oath. Eli buried the bullet casing in the garden, beneath the stalks Maybelle had planted. Peas, beans, hope. Nothing grew yet, but something had taken root. Neither of them spoke about what happened. There were no apologies, no questions. Instead, they rose each morning like survivors of a storm that hadn't quite passed, and each night they lit a single lamp in the kitchen, daring the darkness to come knock again. Then came the fire. It started just before dawn, smoke curling like a serpent to the rafters of the barn. Eli woke to the smell, boots thudding against the wood floor as he grabbed his rifle and ran into the open. Flames danced high and orange, licking through hay and beams. The horses kicked and screamed inside. He ran to them, wrenching the doors open, slapping reins, shouting their names like they were kin. 2 bolted free. 1 didn't. Maybelle was there before he told her. She came with a bucket in each hand, dress soaked to the hem, eyes wild and locked on the blaze. Together, they formed a desperate rhythm. Water, ash, curse, repeat. But it was no use. The barn collapsed inward, a roar of cinders, sparks leaping toward the house. Eli pulled her back. They fell hard in the dirt, his body shielding hers as the wind shifted and flung smoke across the field. When it was over, only the frame remained, black bones against the brightening sky. Someone had poured kerosene. Eli smelled it under the char. The same someone who'd ridden off that day, swearing they'd return with the law behind them and a noose in their wagon. "They ain't gonna stop," he said, voice raw. Maybelle stood barefoot in the soot, hair loose, hands streaked with gray. "Neither will we." They rebuilt, not because they believed the danger was gone, but because refusing to leave was its own kind of war. Eli salvaged what timber he could. Maybelle hammered nails like she meant each one to hurt. The smoke never truly left the air. It curled in her cooking, in his beard, in their bedsheets. But it didn't drive them out. Late one afternoon, Sheriff Tolliver returned. He brought a letter sealed with a Missouri crest and a quiet look in his eyes. "They're suing," he said, "saying you stole what was theirs. Land and woman both." "Lem try," Eli muttered, folding the paper without reading it. Tolliver hesitated. "You can still sell, Eli. Take what's left and ride south. No shame in it." "I already made that mistake once," Eli said, voice low. "Didn't fight for my family back then. Watch him die thinking I was too scared to stay." Tolliver looked to Maybelle. "And you? You're ready to burn with this place if it comes to that." Maybelle didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of fire. I'm afraid of living soft just to die unseen." The sheriff tipped his hat and rode off. He didn't come back again. That night, Eli pulled the photo of his first wife from the drawer and placed it on the mantel beside a candle. The glass was cracked, the child's face nearly gone. Maybelle came to stand beside him, silent. "I keep thinking if I hold on too hard, I won't have hands left for what's here now." She touched his arm, warm and steady. "Let the dead rest. I'm not here to take their place, just to share what's left." He turned to her, and this time he didn't look away. Their lips met without ceremony, without performance. Just heat and breath and the steady heartbeat of two people still learning not to flinch at kindness. It wasn't a beginning. It was something stronger, a stake in the earth. They married proper the next day. Maybelle wore a clean blue dress, her curls pinned high. Eli shaved for the first time in weeks and wore his father's belt buckle. No preacher, just vows spoken plain beneath the only tree that hadn't died. The wind listened. The land, for once, felt still. Word got out. Some folks scoffed. Others sent pie. One woman left a jar of preserves on the porch with no note. But not everyone stayed quiet. One evening, as the sun bled low across the hills, a single rider appeared. Not the man from Missouri. He was done, but a lawyer in a black coat with legal parchment and two witnesses behind him. He read charges. Trespassing, theft, fraud. Eli said nothing. Maybelle stepped forward. "You want this land?" she asked, voice calm. "You think it's owed to men who never laid brick or bled for it? Fine, take us to court. But don't bring fire again. Don't bring guns. Because next time, we won't just survive it. We'll finish it." The lawyer hesitated. "You'd lose in town," he said quietly. Maybelle nodded. "Maybe, but you'd bleed here first." The lawyer left. He didn't come back either. Summer passed into fall. The garden gave up a handful of squash. One of the hens laid an egg with 2 yolks. Eli fixed the porch rail. Maybelle began to hum again. One night, as they lay together listening to crickets and distant coyotes, Eli whispered, "I don't think I ever believed in peace. But this feels like something close." Maybelle smiled against his shoulder. "Peace is just what's left when all the hurt's done talking, and we didn't let it speak for us." He kissed her forehead. She took his hand. And outside, under a hard-earned sky, the wind curled soft through the grass, no longer mourning but carrying laughter, the kind that builds a legacy, the kind that stays.